In this video, we're going to review UConn's victory over the University of South Florida and how things might be lining up for them quite nicely over the 2024-25 season. As you can probably hear, I continue to be ravaged by this flu. I apologize for my voice. I'm hoping it will hold out and won't sound too bad during this video. Before we start, if you enjoy the content, then please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. Now let's get into it. The main takeaway for me was that UConn had to step up in competition versus South Florida, and they stepped up, winning 86-49. And generally, it felt like UConn got on South Florida early and dominated, and then Paige Bueckers was sharp, going 9 of 10. And I guess in this video, I'm going to focus a little bit on the different lineups, as I think that's sort of the main thing that's going to play out in this early part of the season, a bit of mix and matching to see what they have. And then it's just going to continue to be an ongoing puzzle as some of their more experienced players come back from injury and trying to piece them in with the players that developed experience while the experienced players were out, namely AZ Fudd and Aubrey Griffin. Now, the starting lineup versus South Florida was Chin, Shade, Bueckers, Strong, and Brady. And in the first quarter, that lineup was strong on offense, like it was 0.49 per possession. But not surprisingly, the best sustained offensive period of time over 6 minutes was when KK Arnold was in for Chin, as that lineup was plus 9.5 per possession, and obviously that was triggered in large part by KK Arnold's steals. And I'm not saying that they're just going to go strictly by the numbers and this means Chin's not going to be the starter. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they are going to mix and match to see what pieces they have and how they play together. And more specifically to that, they'll take a look during games and obviously play the hot hand. I think it's more likely than not that Chin will be the starter, as Geno likes having a 4-year starter on the court in that experience, which is valuable at the end of the season. Geno was asked during the press conference if he was worried about Chin had some turnovers. He's like, no, she's just learning to play our style and is doing a different role than what she did at Princeton, and it's just going to be a period of adjustment. The other player that Geno is showing a bit of patience for is Ice Brady, which is a bit, well, it's funny considering how he crushed her after the NC State game last year. And I think a few factors go into that. I think last year he was expecting UConn to come out versus NC State and play really well based on the practices they had, and they just came out and laid an egg. So he was super frustrated as well. I think he's figured out Ice a little bit more and just knows that if he crushes her, she's more likely to go in the tank more and lose her confidence, as she's one of those players that doesn't, he describes Paige Bueckers as just having ridiculous confidence and thinking she can do anything and everything, and that is not Ice Brady. So he acknowledged that she did not shoot well in the first game, but also praised her, saying that her defense had been really good. And I think he's doing that in large part just to build her up. If you look at the numbers from that game for defense, they were a better defensive team when Geno Auriemma was in there instead of Ice. Like, their point per possession allowed on lineups that were in more than 2 minutes, like all of those, the Auriemma lineups were all rated or did better on defense versus Ice Brady. As the Ice Brady lineups, the 2 long minutes she got, she was getting up 0.84 per possession and 0.88 per possession, where Auriemma was 0.50, 0.67, and 0.59 per possession. But as I said, the overall plan is just to build up Ice, because they need her for the season, obviously, and there's no sense crushing her right now and taking away her confidence. But don't get me wrong, if she turtles against North Carolina, then he'll absolutely crush her in the press conference, I have no doubt. Because if she does not perform, he will eventually run out of patience, or just even worse, give up, much like he gave up on DeBerry. It was pretty clear in that Kansas game when she got buried that he's like, no, I'm done with DeBerry. And no, I'm not comparing Ice Brady to DeBerry. I'm just saying Geno's mentality is, I give you a chance to do it, you don't do it. What is going to change that gets you to do it if you're given opportunities and you don't do it? And then eventually he just cuts away and goes to a different player. Now, the other player that it's pretty clear UConn is actively trying to build up is Ashlynn Shade, who's come out really well at the start of the season. And it appears that Geno and Paige Bueckers are just both pushing the same mantra: just be aggressive like you were in high school. Don't think, be aggressive and your talent will take over for yourself and you'll do what you did in high school. You'll do it at UConn.
Kind of come together. She's an aggressive kid by nature. She's an athletic kid by nature. She's strong. And I don't think last year she took advantage of any of those things, and she's made a concerted effort to do that.
On the defensive side of the ball, Coach is hard on all of us when it comes to our defense, but he's hard on Ashlynn about taking risk, getting out in the passing lanes, being aggressive, causing commotion. And if you watch the game tonight, she did exactly all of those things. So just to see her hard work all the times, Coach gets on her, I get on her. The whole team needs her to be like that on the defensive end. So it was just like to see it was amazing. Super proud of her. And that's who we want Ashlynn to be every single night. And so to just instill that confidence within her that this is what she does, and that's who she is now, that she showed it.
And Shade in her freshman year obviously had good moments. The question with her is, this year, can she take that next step and do it consistently, game in, game out, regardless of the matchup? And if she does that, then UConn is really playing with house money, as they would have an available rotation of 9. Now, I would see that as being Paige Bueckers, Fudd, Chen, Strong, and El Alfie as the starters. I mean, it can be argued. And then after that, on the bench, and you'd feel comfortable slotting it in, would be KK, Shade, and Ice Brady. In addition to Aubrey Griffin, who Geno's always talked about. She plays better in short bursts, so he'd love to bring her in off the bench. And that really sets up UConn quite well. And to that end, the main goal of the season, or the regular season, is to develop the freshmen and sophomore so that the vets have confidence in them, and they have confidence in themselves when they get to the end and business end of the season. But the other interesting tension or balance for UConn that they are developing, and I find it fascinating, is how much does Paige Bueckers dominate. And in this game, like, she opened the game and dominated early. Like, the first 43 points scored in the first half, she scored 19 of them. And that has been one of the other mantras: get Paige to dominate. She can't be passive. She has to make her imprint on the game. But to that end, you don't want the young players not to develop because they're just sitting around on the perimeter waiting for Paige Bueckers to save them and dominate. And they don't do anything. So that's the constant tension. And then in this game, it was a bit uneven. So Bueckers dominated the first half, but then the sophomores, they took the lead in the third quarter. The freshmen and sophomores scoring 27 out of the 30 points in the third quarter. So I think that should be a fun, interesting dynamic to keep on watching, how Paige Bueckers does the inclusive of her teammates and getting them involved in developing them, which is her natural game. That's not going to be an issue for her. But when she turns on the gas and takes over versus when she takes a back seat, I think that should be fun to watch. And then they have another step up of competition this weekend with going to North Carolina. The game's in Greensboro. And that's interesting, as, like I mentioned last year, Geno thought UConn was ready for North Carolina State and had their hat handed to them. So I'm sure they're keen to avoid a repeat of that. And then North Carolina, they have some veteran players, like obviously Deasia Kelly has gone to Oregon, but they still return Utsby and Kelly. But in addition to that, they've got Toomey and Thomas, who are highly rated prospects. So it should be an interesting matchup and another step up in competition, like I said. Now it's over to you, your thoughts, your comments. Do you think, like me, that Geno's trying to build up Ice and Shade? And do you think it's going to be a little bit of a balance of how much does Paige Bueckers dominate during the season, and, putting that in check so that it doesn't hinder the development of the young players? All over to you, your comments, your poison. It's all welcome. Again, apologies about the voice.